What's up, everybody? It's Bear with BearIndependent.com. Today we're going to talk a little bit, perhaps an intro to OPSEC as part of our ongoing series Back to Basics. OPSEC for SHTF is a very popular subject and one that is bandied about by most preppers, survivalists, whatever, preparedness-minded individuals, as I prefer to refer to myself. Because I think most preppers try and just buy their way out of problems rather than gaining skills, knowledge, building community, doing the things, right? Prepper is kind of a dirty word to me. But most people who will espouse deep knowledge of operational security, in my experience, don't know anything about operational security. They like to refer to, they know the most basic things like, well, I don't want somebody following me back to my house. Cool. Do you know what an SDR is? Surveillance detection route. Have you ever done one? Do you do it regularly? Are you going to such clandestine meetings that you're worried that the feds might be following you back to your apartment, barn, farmhouse, residential home at the end of the cul-de-sac? Maybe. I don't know who you are. Maybe you work for the CIA, FBI, in which case you should already know a bit or two about OPSEC. But most preppers like to season their paranoia with OPSEC. And it's not very palatable, frankly, for the rest of us who have to interact with you, who are super paranoid. That's the super paranoid dance, by the way. You want to see it again? That's what you look like in my mind when you're overly concerned about OPSEC. Let's talk about some actual practical applications. Applications, you be the judge, believe it, of operational security. First of all, who knows what? Yeah, this is what most of y'all are concerned with, but you're thinking externally. I'm talking internally, within your group. Who knows what, and do they have an actual need to know? Do they actually need to know the things that they know? See, somebody cannot betray information that they don't have. Knowingly or unknowingly, willingly or unwillingly. Loose lips sink ships, right? One of the main reasons you don't want everybody to know everything all the time is because once that information is out there, you lose control of the dispersal of that information. If you told Sally, and Sally told Jill, and Jill told Tina, and Tina told her husband Frank, well, now husband Frank knows the private thing that you told Sally. Okay, so it would behoove you to not just be throwing your information out there all over the place, because you need to think about these second and third effects of sharing that information. Just because somebody goes, oh, I swear I won't tell anybody. Copy that. 100% chance of you not telling anybody if I don't tell you in the first place. Now, the flip side of that is you have to make sure that the people that you're trusting to spend the rest of your life with during doomsday or whatever, by the way, build a team that you would hang out with on Tuesday, not just on doomsday. Because if your prepper SHTF end of the world group is full of a bunch of a-holes that you can't really stand, why are you trying to perpetuate existence with them anyway? But I digress. If you don't equip your team, on the flip side of this argument, with the appropriate amount of information, intelligence that they need in order to be able to do their jobs, newsflash, they ain't gonna be able to do their jobs. And so this gets into compartmentalization, right? Sally doesn't need to know everything that Tina knows. Tina doesn't need to know everything that Jill knows. And Jill doesn't need to be talking to Frank, nor does Sally or Tina, okay? And so that's part of building a culture within your group of not betraying the trust that has been put in you and respecting a chain of command, okay? For example, let's say you have a recon section, an intel section, and a commo section. They're all going to work very closely together because of the nature of their work. But recon doesn't necessarily need to be talking to logistics, right? That should pass up the chain of command. Chain of command then takes that information, compiles it, does whatever they do with it. Looks like this most of the time, and then feeds that back to support elements, right? So Who knows what? Big question. And who needs to know what? That's certainly something to be thinking about. But the answer is nobody can know anything. That's not correct. On the flip side, you don't want everybody knowing everything. And so there's a balance there that you have to find amongst your people to equip them appropriately with the information, the intelligence that they need to do their jobs, but not to over-equip them or burden them with too much information, okay? Next, your frequencies with which your radios operate on are not things that should be known publicly. They probably don't need to be known by everybody within the group. And you should not have one set of freaks, you should have multiple set of freaks, and the only people who need to know what that is probably the leader of the commo section and his or her subordinate, direct subordinate, and the command element. That's it. Because, newsflash, your commo will get compromised. Next, BT dubs. A lot of people here and elsewhere in the preparedness community are into ham radio. That's cool. Let me provide a little bit of feedback there. Y'all literally give each other awards for who can talk on the radio the longest. Stop. Stop. That's not good. That is legit operational security. The longer you broadcast, especially from a fixed position, the more likely it is that somebody determines your fixed position. Stop. Also, when you're on the radio, don't be using people's names. Don't be using given names of locations. I'm over here by the Big Tree Road. Yeah, they're on Big Tree Road. Why'd you do that? No. And without being like super ultra tactical badass about it, you know, you don't need to just pull out your multicam whoopee and swim in it and then start typing up all of your new passcodes, which we'll get to in a minute, and your radio handles for everybody, and the names of different areas of the environment that you're operating in. You should do those things. And that, again, is part of that intelligence that may or may not be passed to everybody within the group. There may be a time where everybody within the group needs to know those things because we are now legit operational. But until then, everybody does not need to know those things, okay? Especially if you have like a core group and then an auxiliary outside of that. The auxiliary doesn't need to know those things yet. If at such a time they become incorporated with the core group, then you can make the decision on whether or not to share those things. But your frequencies should not be known. The larger your group gets, the higher the likelihood you have that things like frequencies are going to become compromised. So have a secondary, have a tertiary, okay? Yeah, especially if you're part of a national network. Remember that. There's a reason, for example, that things like the Viking meetups and the Viking groups across the country through Viking Preparedness are compartmentalized. They are the starfish, not the spider. If you cut the leg off of a starfish, it grows another leg. You cut too many legs off of a spider, it dies, okay? So think about that again as well. And don't be jawing on the radio. Hams, I love you guys and girls, you're awesome, but don't be jawing on the radio. Get on the radio, say what you have to say without betraying any actual, names, places, dates, and get off again. This is not a rag chew. Say what you need to say, get off again. Passcodes. There's a whole bunch of people coming to your place when the world ends, right? We all deal with this. Oh, I'm coming to your place when the world ends. We've had this conversation before, YouTube. Are you? I'll be the judge of that, not you. And we have certain boundaries, certain expectations that will be set, that are set, that you will meet before you walk inside of my gate. And if you just show up here, it better be because your world has turned to hell. Otherwise, you need an invite. In which case, let's just say somebody's world has turned to hell and now they're at your gate. If there's somebody you expect to be approaching your gate at any time for any reason during chaos, however you choose to define chaos, what are your passcodes? What are your go, no go? Let's just say, I'm just gonna make one up. Passcode. Hey man, you stacked some rocks? Yep, I did. Okay. That's the first thing. Or maybe it's, no, I didn't. Or, yep, I did. How many did you stack? Well, Maybe 5 is the answer. Okay? 5. Or pick a number. 13. Some odd number that most people aren't going to pull out of the air. And I'm making this up on the fly, so bear with me on this. And then there's a distress code as well. If they say, no, I only stacked 8. 8 means, hey, I'm here, but I've been compromised. Or there's something bad going on out there, and I can't openly tell you about it. But 8, I'm in distress. Copy that. Why is that important? Because I might not be the guy at my gate. You might not be the guy or girl at your gate. And so your security elements need to be aware of these passcodes, and you need to have them pre-established. And different factions within your group need to have different passcodes. Because again, the more widely known something is, the more likely it is to be openly disseminated amongst your enemies, AKA you get compromised. So think about what those things are. And a lot of this has to do with tradecraft, which is a different subject outside the scope of this video, as is the subject of what is it that allows you to get inside of my gate. And so if you're interested to know more about those things, hit me in the comments down below, and I'll see if I can hook y'all up with some more brain dumps on those things. Next, don't put all your eggs in one basket. We talk quite a bit about operational capability and what we call PPCs, pre-positioned caches, okay? Or cache if you're a pinky up kind of guy. I need a sip of water, stand by. Sip achieved. Your PPCs, your pre-positioned caches, if all your eggs are in one basket, what happens when that basket gets compromised? Where do you fall back to? What if you had to run out of your house naked and you have nothing? Well, most preppers like to buy gear, and most preppers have a stack of gear that they're no longer using, or it's not their tier 1 operational gear or whatever. Take that stuff, throw it in a tote with some food and some water, perhaps some expedient shelter and a change of clothes, and put it somewhere. It could be anywhere. Your neighbor's house, the attic of your mom's house, the basement of your pastor's house, in that old farmhouse, 4 blocks away, or at your secondary and tertiary locations, so that you have pre-positioned equipment, capabilities kits is how we would refer to them. So that you have capabilities kits in place that if, when you or somebody you love needs to go there, they have what they need. Franklin Horton, excellent author, wrote a book called Locker 9 about a college-aged girl trying to get home during times of chaos. And her father had prepared for her this locker, this storage unit that she walked into it that was fully, it was a PPC, it was a capabilities kit for sure. Had everything she needed to get home. Think about that. That's a very viable concept, and it's something that's been employed by governments around the world for ever and a day. There are still ordnance caches in Europe from World War II right now, in the Cold War, in place, just in case we need them. Think about that. Apply that same concept to you and yours. And again, not everybody needs to know where that stuff is. That's the kind of information you give out when it's needed, not prior to. Because if nobody knows, nobody can compromise that information. Bear, it's windy and the audio sucks. Yeah, sorry man, I'm not in charge of the wind. It's a beautiful day out here. I felt like shooting a video. We're all just gonna bear with it, okay? Maps and documents. These are easily transportable, very easy to take pictures of, especially in today's day and age where everybody's walking around with a camera in their pocket on their smartphone, except for Mad Kelt, because his phone was made in 1984 by Nokia. And very easily can be compromised. So you want to be careful as to who sees your maps, and don't mark maps up. You need to know here. You need to be able to convey that information here to other people who are looking at the maps, but you don't want to be putting big red X's. All of our food is here. We have spare ammo stored here. This is our fuel depot over here. Stop with that, okay? Maps. You can print out photos from Google Maps, yes, I know they're tyrannical. They also own the platform that I'm talking to you on right now. So, you know, take it all with a grain of salt. You can use ArcGIS, ARCGIS. It costs you, I think, about $100 per year to sign up for that, but that's a very useful tool for doing your area study, which again should not be openly disseminated. Your documents, doing your area study. And then you can go to places like HuntStand, 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 and they make these very good printed on fabric maps that fold up and fit in rucksacks quite well. Ask me how I know. So having some maps that you can share out to be able to convey precise locations and information to people, but that you control access to, is highly recommended. You don't want that stuff just laying around where people can see it. Same thing with your documents. You could, when you're creating documents, especially the really important stuff, you could even go as far as to simply create them by hand with a pen and a piece of paper rather than digitally, because at this point, listen, if it's on the internet or on your computer, it's just a matter of time before somebody you don't want to see it sees it, okay? And you can backfill that statement with whatever nefarious means you prefer. Your documents, especially important things, names, dates, locations, frequencies, all of that should not be openly disseminated. That is for the people that need to know it. And so you need to get really good at asking yourself, who needs to know this? And if you have a bunch of ego within your tribe, within your camp, within your group, within your mag, within your team, your community watch, your shuffleboard, whatever, you're gonna have problems, because there's gonna be people that say, well, I need to know that too. No, you don't, Bob. You need to know to get here, because your job is Farmer Bob, and Farmer Bob doesn't need to know all these things until such a time we determine, Farmer Bob, that you do. In the meanwhile, go pick the green beans. I'm hungry. Okay? And yes, that was a little forceful, but I'm kind of known for that. So I'm sorry, Bob. I didn't mean to offend you. Your green beans are delicious. But listen, we can't have that information just laying out there. And you can't betray information that you don't know, which is why you are not privy to this right now. Because we're actually concerned for not only your well-being, Bob, but the well-being of the group as a whole first and foremost. And so at this point, it has not been determined by the command element, Bob, that you need to know these things. If that changes, believe me, we'll let you know. Okay? And then lastly, operational security. Multiple locations. You need to be thinking about spider points. Where are you going to go if you can't stay where you are? And I'm not talking about bugging out. I'm talking about you got to pull stakes and shut down your operation here and go somewhere else. We'll just say Miami, because I'm in the mood for the beach and a nice Hilton with a big marble hot tub. Let's go to Miami. Sounds good. Who needs to know that we're going to Miami? Again, not everyone, but we need to have a plan to get to Miami. We need to have already figured out the logistics of how we're getting to Miami. Remember, it's logistics that wins wars. It's not sexy, but it's true. Everybody wants to be the pointy end of the spear, and that's cool. No harm, no foul, all the love in the world for the boys and the girls with the boots on the ground getting stuff done. But we forget that the spear has at least 10 to 12 people compromising the handle for every one that's on the pointy end. Logistics wins wars. So how are we getting from here to Miami when we decide to relocate? Who are we bringing? What are we bringing? Again, all this information doesn't need to be privy to everybody within your group, but you need to be thinking about it, because your operational security might dictate that this location, if it becomes compromised, we need to pull stakes and move. And we don't know how we got compromised, which means that not everybody needs to know where we're moving. And we also need to have some type of metric to determine how we got compromised, who it was that compromised us, and have a plan right now before we're in the emotion of the moment to figure out how we deal with those folks who have compromised us. I'll just say there's a Torah for that. So, back to basics. Operational security, intro 2. If you'd like more on these particular subjects, let me know down in the comments. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, clicking that little bell icon. That way YouTube will pretend to notify you when we go live, which we do almost every morning here. Stick around for the brief if you would, please. And shout out to the patrons. Appreciate y'all. Y'all are badass. If you'd like to be a patron and support the show, starts at $1 a month or $10 per year. You can click the little baby bear somewhere down here and that'll take you right to Patreon. And you know what? You'll be one of the cool kids. Straight up. Not gonna lie. I appreciate y'all. Stay frosty. Shalom.